Commander Talora Vex stared at the human through compound eyes that refracted the dim light of her quarters into kaleidoscopic patterns. Her carapace, midnight blue with flecks of bioluminescent cyan, twitched with irritation. This tiny, soft-skinned creature showed no fear. None. Not even the slightest increase in heart rate or pupil dilation that her sensory appendages could detect. "I asked you a question, human," she hissed, her mandibles clicking in what she knew sent shivers down the spines of every species in the Galactic Coalition. "Why aren't you afraid?" The human, Dr. Abigail Foster, according to her personnel file, merely smiled. Not the grimace of terror Talora was accustomed to, but an actual, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Should I be?" Dr. Foster asked, crossing her legs as casually as if they were discussing the weather over tea, rather than sitting in the private quarters of the most feared HFY commander in the quadrant. Talora's antennae flattened against her exoskeleton in surprise. "I could disembowel you with a single swipe before your primitive nervous system even registered pain. But you won't," Dr. Foster replied, reaching for the cup of steaming liquid on the table between them. A bold move, considering Talora hadn't given permission. "You requested me specifically for this diplomatic mission, Commander. Killing the human xenobiologist you asked for would be counterproductive, wouldn't it?" The HFY commander felt her primary heart spasm in what might have been amusement. Humans were such contradictions. Physically vulnerable, yet inexplicably confident. "The Rigelians requested you," Talora corrected, though they both knew it was a half-truth. "They insisted on human medical expertise for their plague. I simply acquiesced." "Right," Dr. Foster nodded, taking a sip from her cup. "And your reputation for eating diplomats who displease you had nothing to do with the fact that I was the only volunteer." Talora's mandibles clicked rapidly, the HFY equivalent of laughter. "That incident was greatly exaggerated. Ambassador Jorax was already dead when I consumed him. It would have been disrespectful to his culture to waste protein." "How thoughtful of you," Foster replied dryly. Outside the viewport, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by the blue-green orb of Rigel. 9, their destination. Talora's flagship, the dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, sliced through the void at sublight speed, its massive frame dwarfing the escort vessels surrounding it. "You didn't answer my question," Talora pressed, leaning forward. The movement caused her armor plates to slide against each other with a sound like knives being sharpened. "My species conquered half the coalition worlds before agreeing to peace. HFY warriors are feared throughout the galaxy. Even our allies flinch when we enter a room. Yet you look at me as if I'm some interesting specimen in your laboratory. Aren't you?" Foster replied, her eyes twinkling mischievously. Talora's secondary heart skipped a beat. No one spoke to her like this. No one. "Careful, human," she warned, extending one razor-sharp appendage to tap the table between them. "My tolerance has limits." "Commander," Foster said, setting down her cup, "I have spent my career studying xenobiology. I have cataloged the digestive enzymes of Jovian acid worms and extracted venom from Plutonian eye serpents. I have performed emergency surgery on a draconian hive queen while her guards tried to decapitate me for touching their sacred mother. After all that, it's hard to be intimidated by an oversized insect with anger management issues." For several heartbeats, silence filled the chamber. Talora's compound eyes fixed unblinkingly on the human, processing this unprecedented insolence. Then, to her own surprise, she burst into a series of staccato clicks and whistles, HFY laughter. "Maybe that's why your species survives despite your obvious physical inferiority," she said. "You have the survival instincts of a concussed Varjan mud puppy, yet somehow persist." Foster's communicator chimed, breaking the moment. She glanced at it. "Medical Bay, requesting my presence. Apparently, one of your warriors is having an allergic reaction to human antibiotics. Probably Lieutenant Cross," Talora chittered dismissively. "His immune system is as weak as his combat skills." "I should go." Foster stood, smoothing her blue medical uniform. "We will continue this discussion later, Dr. Foster." Talora said, her voice reverting to its usual commanding tone. The Rigelian situation is more complex than you have been told. Foster paused at the door. I suspected as much. Plagues don't usually require heavily armed warships for medical transport. Perceptive, Talora conceded, but still woefully uninformed. Then inform me, Foster challenged. Talora's bioluminescent patches flared briefly. Tonight, 2,200 hours. Come alone. Mysterious, Foster smirked. I have always been a sucker for enigmatic alien commanders with secrets. With that, the human was gone, leaving Talora staring at the closed door, wondering what strange twist of evolutionary fate had produced creatures so soft yet so fearlessly defiant. The medical bay was chaos when Foster arrived. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. 3 Keichizuri medics towered over various patients, their movements precise despite their intimidating appearance. Among the wounded was Lieutenant Kraz, his exoskeleton flushed an angry purple where the medication had triggered a histamine response. You the human doctor? He rasped as Foster approached. Dr. Foster, she confirmed, scanning him with her medical tricorder. And you are having quite the reaction to those meds we gave you. Your primitive concoctions, he hissed, though without real malice. They burn. That's because your body is trying to kill the medicine that's trying to help you, Foster explained, preparing a hypo spray. Kind of like your personality. The HFY warrior's antennae twitched. Commander Vex warned us you had a defective speech module. No filter between brain and mouth. It's called honesty, Foster countered, injecting the hypo spray into a soft joint in his exoskeleton. And humor. You should try it sometime. Might make those mandibles less stiff. Surprisingly, Kraz emitted a series of soft clicks. Laughter. Perhaps the commander's interest in you isn't completely misplaced. Foster raised an eyebrow. Her interest, she rejected 6 other human specialists before approving your file. Kraz said, his compound eyes shifting color as the antihistamine took effect. Said the others seemed too breakable. How flattering, Foster muttered. I was selected for my durability. Don't underestimate the compliment. Another voice chittered from behind. Foster turned to see Medical Officer Trees, distinguished by her white-streaked carapace. The commander doesn't concern herself with the fragility of lesser species unless she sees value. Lesser species, Foster repeated. Careful, your superiority complex is showing. Tree's mandibles shifted in what might have been the HFY equivalent of a smirk. Fact, not complex. Your species lacks natural defenses, has minimal strength, and requires extensive artificial protection to survive environments we thrive in naturally. And yet, Foster countered, checking Kraz's vitals on her scanner. We managed to negotiate as equals in the Galactic Coalition rather than continuing a war that was destroying both our worlds. The medical bay fell silent. Even the wounded stopped their keening to stare at the audacious human. Tree's compound eyes darkened. You call surrender negotiation? I call recognizing when continuing to fight becomes mutually assured destruction intelligence. Foster replied evenly. Something many warriors struggle with, regardless of species. Kraz made a sound like grinding stones. HFY approval. You speak like a veteran, human. Mars colony crisis, Foster said simply. I was there. Understanding rippled through the medical bay. The Mars colony crisis had been humanity's first contact with the HFY, a bloodbath that nearly led to Earth's destruction before diplomacy prevailed. Few humans who experienced it firsthand lived to tell about it. You survived Hive Commander VR Tax's assault. Trees asked, her professional hostility momentarily forgotten. Survive? Foster laughed bitterly. I treated his wounds after our forces managed to capture him. Command thought saving his life might demonstrate our value. Even Trees seemed impressed. VR Tax was not known for his patience with medical procedures. 3 broken fingers and a punctured lung later, he was stable, Foster nodded, and slightly less determined to exterminate us. The ship's intercom suddenly blared to life. All crew to battle stations. Unidentified vessels approaching starboard. This is not a drill. The medical team immediately shifted into emergency protocols. Foster grabbed her emergency kit as trees barked orders. Prepare for casualties. Move critical patients to inner chambers. Dr. Foster, you will assist me with Tria. What about the commander? Foster asked, helping a wounded navigator onto a gurney. Commander Vex. Trees replied with something like reverence in her chittering voice. We'll be ensuring there are enemies to treat rather than us becoming battlefield detritus. On the bridge, Talora Vex stood with her forearms braced against the command platform. Her carapace expanded to its full intimidating width. The view screen showed 3 sleek, predatory vessels accelerating toward them. Marauders. Her first officer, Subcommander Dex, reported. Taurian design, but unmarked. Convenient, Talora hissed. Status of shields. At full capacity, Commander. Weapons. Primed and locked. Talora's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Time to intercept. 3 minutes, 17 seconds. She straightened to her full height. Nearly 8 feet of armored, lethal Kichzari warrior. Open a channel. The communications officer complied with practiced efficiency. Unidentified vessels. Talora's voice rumbled across the void. This is Commander Talora Vex of the Dreadnought Inevitable Conquest. You are approaching a Galactic Coalition diplomatic vessel. State your intentions or be destroyed. The response came in the form of energy blasts that dissipated harmlessly against their shields. Well, Talora clicked to her bridge crew. That clarifies things nicely. She settled into her command chair. Return fire. Target their propulsion systems. I want prisoners for questioning. The massive dreadnought's forward batteries unleashed precisely calibrated destruction. 2 of the Marauder ships veered off, but the third took a direct hit, tumbling end over end. Tractor beam, Talora ordered. Bring them in. As the crippled vessel was drawn toward the dreadnought's massive landing bay, Talora's personal communicator chimed, a specific sequence she'd assigned to only one person on board. Commander, Foster's voice came through. Medical bay is prepped for casualties, both ours and otherwise. Do you anticipate survivors among the attackers? Talora's mandibles twitched with something like amusement. Dr. Foster, worried about treating enemy combatants, worried about treating anyone in a vacuum if they breach the hull, Foster shot back. But thank for the concern. Your medical expertise will be required shortly, Talora replied, though perhaps not in ways you anticipated. A pause. Meaning, these attackers aren't random pirates, Talora explained, watching as the tractor beam secured the damaged vessel. They are likely connected to the situation on Rigel 9. The plague we are responding to has political dimensions. So I'm not just treating disease, but potentially interrogating prisoners. Foster's voice held no fear, only professional curiosity. Your species has a unique perspective these Taurians might respond to, Talora confirmed. Meet me in detention level 3 in 20 minutes. Copy that, Commander. As the communication ended, Subcommander Dex approached cautiously. Commander, is it wise to involve the human in interrogations? Talora's compound eyes shifted toward him, her antennae flattening in warning. Are you questioning my tactical decisions, Subcommander? No, Commander, he backpedaled quickly. Merely curious about your strategy. Dr. Foster survived the Mars colony crisis, Talora revealed. She treated VR-Tax himself. Dex's carapace paled visibly. The human treated the Hive commander and lived. Precisely, Talora clicked, rising from her command chair. There's more to this soft-skinned creature than meets the compound eye, and I intend to utilize every resource available to uncover what's really happening on Rigel 9. As she strode toward the bridge exit, her bioluminescent patches pulsed with anticipation. The human doctor was proving more intriguing by the hour. Most fascinating was not Foster's knowledge or skills, but her complete lack of the fear that Talora had grown accustomed to inspiring. It was refreshing and potentially very useful for what awaited them on the plague-stricken planet below. Commander, the communications officer called out, incoming transmission from Regelian Planetary Defense. They are demanding we divert from our approach vector. Talora paused at the door. Tell them Commander Vex acknowledges their concern and will comply when crystalline hell freezes over. Maintain course. As the bridge erupted in appreciative clicks and whistles, Talora allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Between mysterious attackers, suspicious Rigelians, and an utterly fearless human doctor, this mission was becoming far more interesting than the standard diplomatic escort it had appeared to be, and Talora Vex lived for interesting. Detention Level 3 buzzed with activity as Foster arrived. KH-Zuri security personnel towered over her, their carapaces gleaming under harsh lighting as they processed the captured Torian marauders. The prisoners looked like bipedal felines, sleek, muscular bodies covered in short golden fur with distinctive black markings, large pointed ears that swiveled toward every sound. Ah, Dr. Foster. Punctual. Commander Vex emerged from the shadows, her bioluminescent patches casting an eerie blue glow. Have you encountered Torians before? Only in medical journals, Foster admitted, studying the prisoners through the force field. Fascinating cardiovascular system. Triple-chambered heart with auxiliary pumps in their extremities. Yes, very difficult to kill. Talora clicked dismissively. Their bodies continue fighting even after their brains accept defeat. Foster shot her a look. Is that admiration I detect, Commander? Professional assessment. Talora corrected, mandibles twitching. The universe has produced few species worthy of KH-Zuri respect. Torians have potential. High praise coming from you, Foster murmured. So why am I here? I doubt you need medical advice on their physiology. Talora gestured toward the interrogation chamber, where a particularly large Torian sat shackled to a reinforced chair. Unlike his companions, this one's fur pattern featured distinctive silver streaks across his shoulders, marks of rank. Captain Rael Tvar, Talora explained, commander of the vessel we captured. He refuses to acknowledge our authority or explain their attack. And you think he will talk to me? Foster raised an eyebrow. Because I'm so naturally charming. Because you are human, Talora replied simply. Torians and humans have no historical conflicts. Your species joined the coalition after our wars with them ended. You represent a neutral party. Plus I'm small and squishy-looking, Foster added wryly. Less intimidating than 8 feet of armored killing machine with mandibles. Talora's compound eyes flashed with what might have been amusement. Your appearance of vulnerability may prove tactically advantageous, yes. Flattery will get you everywhere. Foster sighed. What exactly do you want me to find out? Why they attacked a clearly marked coalition vessel. Talora clicked, her tone hardening. And what connection their assault has to the situation on Rigel 9. Foster nodded, tightening her ponytail. Any conversational landmines I should avoid. Don't mention their failed rebellion against the coalition 15 cycles ago, Talora advised. Torian pride remains sensitive on that subject. Noted, Foster squared her shoulders. Let's do this. The interrogation chamber door hissed open, admitting Foster while Talora watched through one-way glass. Captain Tavares' amber eyes tracked Foster's movements, pupils narrowing to slits as she approached. They send a human to question me? His voice was a deep growl, surprisingly melodic despite the obvious hostility. The insect queen too busy polishing her carapace. Commander Vex thought you might prefer speaking with someone whose mandibles can't slice your throat open, Foster replied calmly, taking the seat opposite him. I'm Dr. Abigail Foster, Xenobiologist. A healer. Tavares' ears flicked forward with interest. Not military intelligence or coalition security. Just a doctor, Foster confirmed, spreading her empty hands. Here to help with a medical crisis on Rigel 9. For made to sound suspiciously like laughter. Medical crisis. Is that what they are calling it now? Foster leaned forward. Calling what exactly? You really don't know, do you? The Torian captain studied her, his expression shifting from contempt to something like pity. Your bug commander is flying you straight into a genocide, human. Explain, Foster demanded, all pretense of casual conversation vanishing. The plague on Rigel 9 is a designer pathogen, Tvar growled, created in KH-Zuri laboratories tested on Taurian prisoners, and now deployed against Rigelian dissidents. Foster kept her expression neutral despite the chill that ran down her spine. That's a serious accusation without evidence. The evidence is in the virus itself, Tvar replied. It only affects species with specific genetic markers. Markers common among the northern Rigelian provinces that have been pushing for independence from the coalition. And you know this how? Foster pressed. Because we have been running blockades for 6 months, he admitted freely. Smuggling medical supplies and evacuating the worst affected victims to neutral territories for treatment. So you are humanitarian pirates, Foster said skeptically. Tavares fur bristled. We are Taurian Defense Force operating without official sanction. Our government can't openly oppose the coalition, but they won't stand by while civilians are exterminated. The door hissed open as Talora stormed in. Her carapace expanded to maximum intimidation width. Absurd lies. The HFY Imperium would never deploy biological weapons against coalition worlds. No, Tvar snarled, straining against his restraints. Like you never used nerve agents on Taurian colony worlds during the border wars? Your species writes history with poison, Commander. Talora's mandibles clicked rapidly, a warning sign Foster recognized from her xenobiology training. The commander was approaching her rage threshold. Commander, Foster intervened, stepping between them. A moment outside, please? To her surprise, Talora complied, following her into the observation room. Once the door sealed, Foster rounded on her. Is there any truth to his accusations? She demanded. Of course not, Talora hissed, though her compound eyes refused to meet Foster's gaze. The Rigelian situation is complicated. Northern provinces have been in rebellion for years. The plague is an unfortunate coincidence. Bullshit, Foster stated flatly. I volunteered for this mission to treat a naturally occurring epidemic. If this is biological warfare, I'm being used as cover for war crimes. You are being dramatic. Talora's antennae flattened against her head. The situation requires medical expertise regardless of the pathogen's origin. Its origin matters if you're asking me to treat symptoms while your people keep deploying the cause. Foster's voice rose. I won't be party to genocide, Commander. Something shifted in Talora's demeanor. A subtle realignment of her armored plates, a dimming of her bioluminescent patches. You truly believe I would participate in such an operation? The genuine question caught Foster off guard. I don't know you well enough to say. Then perhaps it's time you did, Talora replied, her voice unusually quiet. She activated her wrist computer, displaying classified documents. These are the real mission parameters transmitted to me after we left Coalition space. Foster scanned the files, her expression growing darker with each paragraph. This isn't a medical mission at all. It's a military operation disguised as humanitarian aid. Yes, Talora confirmed, but not for the reasons the Taurian believes. The pathogen attacking the Rigelians wasn't deployed by the HFY Imperium, at least not with official sanction. Then who? General Zarek. Talora spat the name like a curse. My predecessor and mentor. He commands the secret bioweapons division that was supposedly disbanded after the coalition treaties. Foster's mind raced. But why attack Rigelian separatists? What does he gain? Destabilization, Talora explained. If the northern provinces collapse, the planetary government will request increased coalition military presence. And who better to provide that security than HFY forces? Creating the problem and the solution, Foster realized. A foothold in a strategically valuable system without triggering coalition sanctions. Precisely. Talora's mandibles clicked softly. Our true mission is to identify the bioweapon deployment sites and neutralize them while administering the cure my scientists have developed. Foster's eyes narrowed. You have a cure already? Then why request a human xenobiologist? Talora's compound eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Because I needed someone the Rigelians would trust. Someone whose species has no history of biological warfare. Someone who would question orders when confronted with evidence of atrocities. You needed someone who wasn't afraid of you, Foster breathed, understanding dawning. Someone who would challenge you directly rather than obey out of fear. Yes, Talora admitted. The selection parameters for this mission were quite specific. My history with VR tax, Foster realized. My Mars colony experience. You chose me because I stood up to a H3 commander before. And lived, Talora added with something like approval in her chittering voice. Your species' stubborn defiance occasionally proves useful. Gee, thanks, Foster muttered. So what now? We can't exactly stroll on a Rigel. 9, and tell them we are here to dismantle illegal Kitsuri bioweapons. Now, Talora's bioluminescent patches pulsed with determination. We negotiate with the Torian captain. His blockade runners have ground intelligence we need. And if he refuses to cooperate, then I will be forced to demonstrate why most species fear the Kitsuri, Talora replied grimly. Foster caught her arm before she could return to the interrogation room. No, there's a better way. I'm listening, Talora said, her antennae twitching with curiosity. An hour later, the inevitable conquest hung in orbit above Rigel. 9, flanked by the remaining Torian vessels, now allies rather than adversaries. On the bridge, Captain Tvar stood at tactical station while Foster and Talora reviewed the planetary scans. 3 deployment sites, Tvar confirmed, pointing to blinking red dots on the northern continent. Disguised as water treatment facilities, they aerosolize the pathogen during standard purification processes. Elegant, Talora admitted grudgingly, and difficult to detect without insider knowledge. Your General Zarek has agents within the provincial government, Tvar explained. They facilitated the infrastructure upgrades that installed the bioweapon systems. Foster studied the medical data scrolling across her tablet. The pathogen modifies itself based on the target's genetic structure. That's why it only affects certain populations. Can your cure address all variants? Talora asked. I believe so, Foster nodded. It's essentially a nanite delivery system that identifies and neutralizes the pathogen regardless of its adaptations. But we need to stop new infections while treating existing cases. That's where my teams come in, Tvar said. We have mapped access points to all 3 facilities. Small strike teams can insert, neutralize security, and disable the systems. Talora's compound eyes darkened. Those facilities will be guarded by KH-Zuri's special operations units. Your Torians would be slaughtered. Not if they had KH-Zuri assistance, Foster suggested, giving Talora a meaningful look. The bridge fell silent as the implication hung in the air. Talora's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this radical proposal. You're suggesting I lead coalition forces against my own people? She finally asked. I'm suggesting you uphold coalition law against rogue elements committing war crimes, Foster corrected firmly. You said yourself this operation lacks official sanction. It would be viewed as treason by many in the Imperium, Talora cautioned. Sometimes doing the right thing looks like treason to the wrong people, Foster replied softly. Talora stared at her for a long moment, then straightened to her full, intimidating height. Subcommander Dex. Yes, Commander. Her second-in-command approached cautiously. Prepare 3 strike teams. Elite warriors only. Full tactical gear. We deploy to the surface in 30 minutes. Dex's antennae twitched nervously. May I ask the mission parameters, Commander? We are preventing a genocide, Talora replied simply, and possibly starting a civil war. As the bridge erupted into activity, Foster touched Talora's armored forearm. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, human, Talora clicked. If we survive, I'll be court-martialed and you will likely face coalition charges for interfering in military operations. If we don't stop this, Foster replied firmly, neither of us could live with the alternative. For the first time since they'd met, Talora's mandibles formed what Foster recognized as a Kachsari smile. Perhaps this is why I find your species so confounding. Your moral courage often exceeds your survival instincts. Is that a compliment? Foster asked. An observation, Talora corrected, though her bioluminescent patches pulsed with something like affection. Now prepare your medical teams. When we neutralize those facilities, you will have thousands of patients needing treatment. The insertion went smoother than anyone anticipated. Using Talora's command codes, the strike teams infiltrated all three facilities simultaneously. Foster accompanied Talora's team, her medical scanner constantly monitoring the bioweapon concentrations. "This reading can't be right," Foster muttered as they moved through the sterile corridors of the main facility. "The pathogen concentration is 1,000 times higher than environmental levels should allow." "What does that mean?" Talora asked, her bio rifle sweeping the hallway ahead. "It means they're not just deploying it incrementally through water systems," Foster realized with horror. "They're preparing for mass dispersal. This facility alone contains enough to wipe out the entire northern continent's population." Talora's compound eyes darkened with rage. Zarek has gone completely rogue. This would trigger full coalition intervention, which is exactly what he wants. A new voice echoed through the corridor. Foster and Talora spun to face an imposing Kijzari warrior, his black carapace marked with red command insignia. Behind him stood a dozen heavily armed soldiers. "General Zarek," Talora's voice was ice. "You dishonor the Imperium with these actions." The general's mandibles clicked in amusement. "I advance the Imperium's interests while politicians play diplomacy games. When this pathogen releases, the coalition will have no choice but to authorize full military occupation of Rigeline, the first of many worlds that will return to proper Kijzari control. You will trigger another interstellar war," Foster interjected. "Billions will die." Zarek's compound eyes fixed on her with cold calculation. The human speaks as if her opinion matters. "How curious that you bring a pet to a military operation, Talora." "Dr. Foster is here to administer the cure to your bioweapon," Talora replied, subtly shifting to place herself between Foster and the general. "There will be no cure." Zarek's mandibles clicked decisively. "Only glorious reconquest. The Imperium grows soft with peace. We are warriors, not diplomats." "We are survivors," Talora countered. "The last war nearly destroyed our homeworld. The coalition exists because the alternative was mutual extinction." "Spoken like a true collaborator," Zarek hissed. "Seize them. The commander will face military tribunal. The human," his mandibles clicked with malicious anticipation, "will provide valuable research data on how her species responds to concentrated pathogen exposure."